A bitter wind sliced through the quiet evening, whipping snowflakes sideways across the nearly empty street. The town's old street lamps buzzed faintly, their yellow glow barely piercing the curtain of white. Terrence Miles pulled his jacket tighter around his chest, but it was no match for the December chill. He had left the community center late after reviewing some paperwork, deciding against waiting for a driver. Sometimes he liked to walk, to feel the rhythm of the city under his feet, to remind himself of where he came from. He wasn't dressed for the weather, just a thin coat and slacks, his polished shoes crunching against the fresh snow. The roads were mostly deserted, save for the occasional passing car. Terrence was only halfway to his townhouse when the blue and red flash of patrol lights flooded the street. A police SUV rolled to a stop beside him, its window lowering with a squeal. "Hey, you," barked a voice from the driver's seat. "What are you doing out here?" Terrence stopped, hands tucked in his coat. "Walking home." The second officer stepped out, his breath steaming in the icy air. "Walking home. In this?" His eyes scanned Terrence up and down, narrowing. "You don't look like you live around here." Terrence said nothing at first. He had learned long ago that sometimes silence told more than words could. Still, the officers didn't budge. The one outside circled him slowly, like a wolf sizing up its prey. "You fit the description," the officer muttered. Terrence raised a brow. "Description of what?" Neither answered. Instead, the taller one smirked. "How about you show us a few push-ups right here? Warm yourself up, huh?" The ridiculous command hung in the freezing air. Terrence blinked, stunned, half expecting it to be a bad joke. But when the officer placed a firm hand on his shoulder, shoving him toward the snow-crusted pavement, Terrence realized they were serious. "Come on, let's see it," the driver urged, stepping out now too. "Down, push-ups, or things are going to get rough." The rage simmering in Terrence's chest could have melted the snow. But his face remained calm, unreadable. He lowered himself slowly to the ground, palms pressing against the icy concrete, cold biting into his skin through thin gloves. "One," he muttered as he pushed himself up. The cops chuckled. "Keep going. Faster." The humiliation burned hotter than the cold. He was a grown man, reduced to performing like a circus act in the dead of night. He forced himself through push-up after push-up, each one driving the anger deeper into his bones. The officers laughed, filmed on a phone, taunted him like children daring a peer to dance. His muscles strained, breath coming in white clouds. His palms ached against the frost, but he kept going until one of the officers finally waved him off, satisfied. "That'll do," the taller one said with a sneer. "Guess you're free to go, champ. Better run home before you freeze." Terrence rose slowly, brushing the snow off his trousers with dignity, even though his hands shook from the cold. His eyes locked with theirs, unwavering, quiet fury simmering behind them. "See you around," he said calmly. And he walked away, back straight, leaving their laughter echoing in the night. The following morning, sunlight streamed into the polished windows of City Hall, reflecting off the marble floors of the mayor's office. The same man who had been forced into the snow hours before now sat behind a wide oak desk, his suit sharp, his expression carved from stone. Terrence Miles, mayor of the city, reviewed a thin folder in front of him, though his mind needed no reminder of what it contained. The faces of the two officers were seared into his memory, along with the bitter sting of last night's. Cold. His assistant knocked lightly on the door and peeked in. "Mayor, the chief of police is here." "Send him in," Terrence said. Chief Harrison entered, shoulders tense, clearly uneasy. He was a large man, with years of service carved into the lines on his face. But today, he looked smaller somehow, almost defensive. "Mr. Mayor," he began. "You wanted to see me." Terrence gestured toward the chair across from him. "Sit." The chief lowered himself slowly, clasping his hands together. Terrence slid the folder across the desk. The chief opened it, his eyes scanning rapidly over the report, the photographs, the complaint filed only an hour ago. The chief started, then stopped, the weight of silence pressing on him. "You know what this is," Terrence said evenly. "Two of your men harassing a citizen. Intimidating him. Forcing him into the snow to do push-ups like some kind of sideshow." At night, in freezing weather, the chief swallowed hard. Mr. Mayor, save it, Terrence cut him off sharply. Because I was that citizen. The chief's head snapped up, eyes wide. The words hung between them, heavy and unmovable. Terrence leaned forward, his voice low but powerful. Last night, your officers pulled me off the street. They didn't ask who I was. Didn't care. They saw a black man walking in a nice neighborhood and decided that was enough reason to humiliate him. They laughed while I froze on the ground, struggling through push-ups like some criminal dog and pony show. The chief's face drained of color. Mr. Mayor, this is unacceptable. You'll do nothing, Terrence snapped. Because I will. Effective immediately, both of those officers are terminated. Their badges, their guns, their careers, gone. The chief opened his mouth, but Terrence's glare silenced him. This city doesn't need men like that patrolling its streets. They don't serve justice. They don't protect. They humiliate. They abuse. And I will not tolerate it under my watch. He rose from his chair, towering now, his calm demeanor sharpened into steel. You will deliver their termination notices today. And then, Chief, you will begin cleaning house. Because if there's one thing I won't allow, it's for citizens, my citizens, to be treated the way I was treated last night. The chief nodded quickly, his throat tight, knowing he had no ground to stand on. And one more thing, Terrence said, his voice softening but carrying an edge sharper than ice. Tell them the man they forced into the snow, the man they mocked, the man they thought powerless, was the one who held their futures in his hand all along. The silence stretched, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Finally, the chief stood, clutching the folder like a weight. Yes, Mr. Mayor, he said quietly. It'll be done. Terrence watched him leave, the door clicking shut behind him. He let out a slow breath, the tension easing from his shoulders. For a moment, he thought of last night's bitter cold, the sting of the snow against his skin, the laughter in the darkness. But he thought also of the justice delivered today. Of how sometimes, dignity didn't come from lowering yourself to the cruelty of others, but from standing taller when the time came to strike back. As the city outside bustled in the bright morning sun, Terrence leaned back in his chair, eyes closing briefly. He had endured humiliation. He had tasted anger. But he had answered it the only way he knew how, with power, with justice, with the weight of authority wielded not for vengeance, but for change. And somewhere, two men were packing up their uniforms, realizing too late that the stranger they mocked on the frozen street was the very man who now decided their fate.